The budget action camera market doesn't come much more budget than this fully equipped package, the Hamswan F68. With their built-in display, wireless connectivity and the various shooting modes and options we've become accustomed to with typical action cameras, the Hamswan F68 looks rather impressive when you consider its specifications. Even more so when you consider its relatively low price point of around $50 or less if you shop around. The package is pretty decent too, bundled with a range of GoPro compatible mounts including adhesive mounts, brackets, clip mounts, tethers, all the basic stuff to get you started. It's all pretty cheap quality mind, but still good to see you get a rather substantial package alongside the camera itself, which comes well protected in a separate box. The clear plastic underwater housing helps make the camera waterproof to 30 meters, dustproof and shockproof, all pretty much standard stuff, complete with a standard attachment point compatible with the GoPro mounting ecosystem, as well as the same top clasp found with the GoPro Hero 4 housings. When you take the camera out of its casing, the feeling of manufacturing quality is rather promising. Similar in size to most of the competition, the camera feels neat, sturdy and safe in the hand, thanks to its hardened plastic finished body. What does stand out is how light this thing is, even with battery inserted. Otherwise there's no standout feature as such, but I guess that's expected with most budget cameras. On the front we have the main 170-degree wide-angle lens backed by a 12-megapixel sensor. There's little in the way of technical data on this unit, but it's supposedly capable of 4K video capture, which I'd take with a pinch of salt. It's most likely interpolated 4K at this price point, so standard 1080p is most likely the sweet spot. Nevertheless, the command layout is pretty standard too, with a power and mode button on the front, a shutter button at the top, and two directional buttons on one side, all used to browse through the menu, operate different modes and capture footage. Each button feels crisp and precise with a clearly defined click, although naturally when in its waterproof housing they will require more force. On the opposite side we have the micro USB port for charging and data transfer, and a slot for the micro SD memory card to be inserted, with cards up to 64GB being supported. There's no HDMI output, although not something the intended target market would make use of anyway. Nevertheless, the bottom incorporates a cavity for the included 1050mAh battery, which supposedly provides around 90 minutes or so recording time at 1080p, after a 3-hour charge, covered by a plastic and rather flimsy battery door. Finally, along with the status LEDs at the top and back of the device, we also find the unit's 2-inch LCD display on the rear, which is not touch sensitive, although we should have known that from the unit's price point anyway. All in all, what we have here is a pretty standard action camera configuration, with a good level of build quality, although nothing we haven't really seen done before. Press the front power button and the camera springs to life following a few seconds boot up time and provides an instant live feed of what the lens sees. It's a decent screen, not the brightest or the sharpest I've come across, adequate for lining up your shots but nothing spectacular, with basic status and battery life information on clear display. As with other cameras, hit the front mode button to toggle between video and photo modes, as well as playback and onto camera settings, which are thankfully incredibly simple to navigate, with the mode button cycling between the different menus across the top, the navigational buttons cycling between options, and the shutter button confirming and changing options. Talking of options, there aren't very many to change though. Under video we can set resolutions, 4K being available, although as mentioned most probably interpolated, and it's only at 15 frames per second anyway. So 1080p is probably going to be the sweet spot here, as well as time-lapse and loop recording. Image capture options are just as simple, while the remaining menus allow basic camera characteristics to be changed. All in all, an incredibly easy camera to get up and use. No need to reach for any user manuals at all. Great for youngsters or first-time action camera users. Of course, enabling the camera's built-in wireless connectivity provides the ability to use the companion app, which is available on both iOS and Android platforms, and will receive a live feed of what the camera sees. And although I expected a fair amount of lag here, I was actually quite surprised. There's very little of it. Anyways, with the app we can cycle between the different shooting modes thanks to the nice large buttons, as well as changing options between modes. All pretty basic stuff. We can then play back captured content, which can stream a little slowly, as well as download it to your device or delete it altogether. Finally, we can change all camera settings quickly and easily. All settings available through the camera are available here and all work pretty well. While using the app I had no disconnection issues, so it's rather reliable too, although note that you do lose the camera's rear screen as well as all functionality on the camera itself. The buttons are unresponsive and pressing the up button, as indicated on screen, will instantly disable Wi-Fi altogether. Not a deal breaker, but something to bear in mind. When it comes to performance, for a camera that this cheap, it's okay. Not brilliant, just okay. Bear in mind what you see here is raw footage from the camera, no colour correction or editing whatsoever, although also note that the quality will have dropped slightly due to YouTube compression, but regardless, capture quality isn't too bad. Don't get me wrong, details certainly aren't the sharpest I've seen, and colours aren't the most vivid, certainly getting a little mushy at distance, but the footage is generally smooth and has a nice wide angle field of view. That's when capturing at 1080p 30, which is pretty much the go-to resolution for this camera. 4K isn't true 4K and won't be smooth due to the 15 frames per second limitation. Also note that the 1080p 60 isn't actually 60 frames per second. It's actually shooting at 30 frames per second and doubling up the frames, so another misleading resolution here too. Resolutions aside, dynamic range isn't brilliant either though, and the camera is sometimes slow to adjust between different lighting conditions, and there's no image stabilization too. But that's probably expected from a camera in this price range. You can't have it all when paying such a low price after all. Those after smooth slow-mo shots will need to look elsewhere, I'm afraid. The camera just won't do it. Quality will also suffer quite drastically, so don't expect professional level shots. Not by far. Image quality is also just like videos. Some details are maintained quite well and you can produce decent images, but to be fair, you're probably better off using any modern smartphone which will produce much better shots. When it comes to low light, the Hamswan is in the same boat as all other action cameras with such small sensors. The more light you can throw at it, the better, since the darker the subject, the more grain you'll see in the video. And trust me, you'll be seeing plenty of grain here, so avoid low light shooting at all costs. As it stands though, the Hamswan F68 is a standard action camera. At around $50 or less if you shop around, users get a good overall package for their cash with a camera that can supposedly shoot up to 4K HD at 15 frames per second, which I'd question, although I'd stick to 1080p 30 as the sweet spot. It's easy to use with that built-in screen along with a menu structure that's easy to navigate and makes changing settings a breeze. If the remote option is what you're after, the app is just as easy to understand and well structured. In short, although the Hamswan F68 makes for a decent budget level camera, you'll get better quality from most modern smartphones nowadays. If you're after high quality shots to produce good quality content, you'll want to stay away from this and look elsewhere. Although if it's for social media, then it's not so bad. It's also a great unit for youngsters experimenting with their first action camera and simply looking to share their adventures with family and friends thanks to its ease of use. For anyone more serious into capturing their action sports though, you'll most probably want to look elsewhere.